My name is Preston Whitfield. I've been working with NOCO Hemp Expo since the second year as program director. It's been amazing to watch the evolution of the industry. I've gotten to see a lot of the bottlenecks in the industry and getting to watch those, us being able to overcome these bottlenecks to make it to tomorrow. And that's what we're depending on you guys for. So really excited to introduce our next panel. We're going into fantastic fiber in the South. So really looking forward to the information that we're about to give here. But I've got a great bunch of panelists. I'd like to welcome on the stage. Come on back, guys. And so we're going to be joined today by Mr. Greg Wilson of Hempwood, also Tom Pires, and Franny Tracy, and Mr. Gary Sykes. So really supporting every aspect of the hemp fiber industry, from growing to process, or to harvesting to processing into final product. So guys, join me up on stage here. And I'm going to go ahead and sit down, and we'll go through the panel, and towards the end we'll have some questions. So if you don't mind, hold the questions toward the end there, and we'll try to get to everything we can here. But let's go ahead and get started. We'll start here with Greg, and we'll work our way down. Introduce yourselves, and we'll get going.
Alrighty, my name is Greg Wilson. I'm the founder of Hempwood. We're in Murray, Kentucky. We have 2 facilities there. Our first facility makes the Hempwood lumber. Our second facility makes the flooring, panels, cabinetry, things like that. So we have 23 employees. We work 6 days a week, and we just get it done.
Hello, my name is Franny Tracy, and we have Franny's Pharmacy. It's home-based out of Asheville, North Carolina. I was the first female farmer in North Carolina to plant hemp, and that was for food and fiber. So my passion for that has continued, even though I grow for CBD now and have dispensaries, 5 in 5 states, 10 dispensaries, and my passion is regenerative ag. That's right.
I'm Gary Sykes. I grew up on a farm here in North Carolina, south in Anson County. Happen to know that area. So got involved in hemp when it first came together. We, in North Carolina, first year we were able to grow was 2017. A year before, we came together with farmers to join a co-op, formed a co-op to actually be able to fund most of the charge to fund the hemp commission to be able to grow hemp. So working with farmers has been my strong suit, and that's what I've been working on.
Okay, my name's Tom Pierce. I'm also a farmer. I grew up on a farm and started farming on my own small-scale farm. Went to work for a cooperative cotton gin many years ago, 40 years I've been running these gins and still running them today. And I say them because I actually managed 2 separate cooperatives for a long time. And one of those gins, we've converted some of the older machinery that we don't use anymore. Again, I don't know if I set up from the San Joaquin Valley, California, and we grow Pima cotton, very long, strong fiber cotton. And takes a different type of actual ginning, roller ginning, and so part of our gin was just set aside when we switched to Pima cotton. So that's where we've done some work as far as converting that to processing those machines to process hemp fiber.
Yeah, we got some great knowledge sitting right here on stage. So excited to be speaking with you on all this. So. Look, I want to start with you and ask you, what got you into hemp from cotton to hemp? And I will back that up saying, North Carolina has been known to be a textile leader. So really excited to be talking about fiber, hemp fiber, and textiles in the U.S. So what got you into the hemp industry?
Well, necessity, I guess. We had 1.6 million acres of cotton back in the 80s, 90s, and in the San Joaquin Valley, 1.6 million acres, and we're down less than 200,000 acres of cotton today, and the majority of that is Pima cotton. So that farmers have transitioned to permanent crops largely, and the cotton just over the years didn't return what they needed to continue farming. Water is a huge issue in the San Joaquin Valley, or lack of water, and so they went to drip irrigation on most of the crops. I have almonds myself, and I've got that on drip irrigation. And again, kind of lost the train of thought here. Why would I end up from cotton going into hemp? Well, that reduction in acres and crops, farmers going to permanent crops, I've seen a value of annual crops. So my thing is telling these farmers you have choices of annual crops. If you don't have water, you can sit out a year, and or if you don't like the price of that crop, like happens last year with almonds, I didn't like it, but you've made that capital investment, you're stuck with that permanent crop. And so if you have an annual crop, you can change. I've grown cotton, I've grown corn, I've grown a lot of different annual crops, and I want to grow this hemp now.
Perfect. Let's take a quick survey. How many people in here are in the hemp industry right now? Okay, perfect. How many people are in here to learn to get into the hemp industry? Just getting started. Okay, one more. Who is doing fiber hemp? Wow. Now, I gotta say, out of all the shows that I've done, that's quite impressive. I am applauding you guys. So as we start to discuss this, one of the things, guys, as we're talking to them, if you think about bottlenecks and solutions that we can help inspire these guys, let's really think about that. But in the first step of this, we're talking about planting, growing hemp. And I'd like all of you guys to jump in and answer, but what are some of the things that you're seeing? And I would say let's focus this on genetic selection, field locations, anything like that that can help be successful. Go ahead, Franny.
So the first year, I'm very heavy into research, as anybody that knows about our brand. So part of what we did when we grew fiber was a couple of different varieties. Of course, I love the one that's 10 feet tall, and it's big and it's beautiful. Then we had one that was 4 feet tall. And there's so much to this in the growing side. What we found out at the end, it was the first in 2017 of the culmination of that growing. It was the first time that these spinsters had ever had different varieties of hemp to work with. So if you're looking at growing, the moral of this story is find out what varieties you need to grow and what you're growing for. Always, in supply chain, you always need to start with the end. What are you growing for? Because what we have found through the research with hemp varieties for fiber, obviously very different from others, is that different varieties grow well for different purposes. So we have continued to do research with NC State. We shifted that to CBD trials, but there are still ongoing trials in fiber. Super interesting. And the bottleneck there is always going to be supply and demand, right? We have the demand. All of y'all are here. We see the market. We all want this. Now it's revitalizing textiles and the processing, which these guys have experience in, that's going to make it available. So we're working on supply.
Gary, can you touch on, let's talk about how what genetics work well in the regions, and then how many seeds per acre are you planning to achieve what you're achieving?
Thank you, Preston. I really want to pick up from what Franny was saying and talk about genetics. And what we've learned in 4 years of not a lot of success in North Carolina is that their latitude is everything when it comes to hemp genetics. And so after planting a crop last year, we were promised was going to be fantastic. Came up beautiful. It was AOSCA certified seed. Everything I could want for. We had a great stand. Everything was perfect. It got knee high and went into flower. It was really our worst. Well, it wasn't our worst failure, but it's certainly not a big good crop. So from there, I started looking. Okay, I've got to bring in genetics that are going to work here. And And so working with a lot of different universities in the country, they back me up that, yeah, you're on the right track. Find something that's already bred and working in lower latitudes. So from that, we brought in Australian genetics this year from Ecofiber, MS77. We had not broken through 3,000 pounds per acre production up until this year. The Australian genetics are now 16 feet tall. We're ready to harvest it, went into flower, started pre-flower about 10 days ago. We're fixing to put that on the ground, and we're very excited. I don't want to pitch. I've got an idea what I think we're going to yield this year, and all I'll say is we're going to blow 3,000 pounds out of the water. So,
How many pounds of seed per acre did you do to achieve that?
that's a good question, and that's something we need to talk about. So let's lose this pounds of seed per acre, okay? Because seed genetics, you're looking at 15,000 seed per pound up to, I've seen 60,000 seed per pound. So you really cannot plan by pounds per acre. It depends on the genetics, and the genetics are going to dictate what you're growing for. Am I growing for fiber? What kind of fiber? Is it for bioplastics? Is it for pulp and paper? Is it, what am I going to use it for? So that's why I really see the industry coming around, Preston, to saying, okay, I'm a processor, I need this product, I'm going to supply you the genetics, and that's how I see this industry shaping up.
That was brilliantly said, Gary. Brilliantly said, because you got to really think about your final product. So he's already reverse engineering where he needs to be to understand who he's going to be supplying. So, Greg, from your perspective and what the products that you're using, do you have the specific varieties that you're seeking for this, or does anything work for what you're doing?
Well, we know as little and as much as everybody else. We've done probably 400 different trials over the last 6 or 8 years. Murray State University has the most history and research of any university that I've found inside of the United States. I actually moved from China to Murray, Kentucky, specifically for their Agricultural Hemp Innovation Center. I'm not from Kentucky, but they do trials for us like crazy every year. They have 5 different farms that are owned by the university that are in different areas within the 5-county region there. So you have some of them that are down in the Mississippi bottoms. You have some of them that are actually, the best farm is on campus. They got 400 acres on campus that will do 150 different trials in a year between maybe 15 or 20 different types of seeds, different fertilizers, different herbicides, different pesticides. They even have all these different companies that come into the university and sponsor trials, whether they're supplying seeds, like the Polish seeds that work really well in Pennsylvania don't work so well in Kentucky. The Italian seeds work very well where we are, but they're pretty expensive. We've had Atletic Campagna and Fibronova. Fibronova, we had 5.5 tons an acre. I've never seen that before. But we couldn't harvest it. It was that big around, we were 14 feet tall. We actually, I had to pay the ag fraternity with cash and beer to fill up dump trucks because you couldn't bail it. And so we had them going for about 2 or 3 weeks filling up dump trucks. And then we learned that getting 2.5 to 3 tons, maybe 4 tons in a dump truck didn't make sense when you got to run 50 miles down the road. So there's all these different things. No one really knows the answer. I can say that latitude is the most important thing that we've seen, because if it comes from, in our area, something in Italy, something in southern France, then it typically works pretty well. The germination rate is all over the place. I can say that some of the seeds that we get in have germination rates of 92, 93, 95%. Some of the seeds that we get in have germination rates of 40%. And we'll send them to the university, and they'll do their 100 seed, 500 seed, 1,000 seed trials, and give us our reports back for it, and tell us, hey, this is or is not going to perform well, probably, at least from a germination perspective. And they'll tell us that before we stick it in the ground. They'll actually just confirm what comes with the paperwork with the seeds. I can say that planting it after frost is absolutely necessary. We lost 2 fields this year. because we planted the first week of April, and we got a frost on the 17th of April. They died. Now, it was only 5 or 6 acres, and another one was 20 acres, but it's still a fair bit of time and effort and money. For our different crops that we do, I can say that they typically only grow a foot or two after the summer solstice in height, and we're looking for height. I know a general number that I hear from people is if you can do 1 million plants in an acre, then you're going to have a pretty good output. Break even for a dedicated crop in our system is 3 tons an acre. And you don't hit that every time. I can say that for a dual crop, if you can still get 400 or 800 pounds of seed off the top, then what you need to pull from the fiber is less. We have 50 acres of a dual crop that just came in last week, and they got, it wasn't even 2 tons an acre, but he already had his money from the top of the plant. And my preference is to be able to buy just like wheat straw, because I'm a horrible farmer. I'm in a different state, and my cows are not in my paddock right now, and my wife is pissed. But if we can buy it like wheat straw, then we can focus on what we make and getting it into the market. Now, we always have to grow 200 acres or something like that ourselves to make sure that we can at least get by. But I prefer to buy the lion's share of what we do out of something that I already see in the field. Right. And it reduces significantly the pressure on the farmer with being able to at least get the money back. And with beans and corn where they are this year, you're not going to pitch it on being more profitable than corn this year. But a lot of our guys, they grow 5, 10, 20, maybe even 50 acres, kind of as fun. It's a hobby thing. Their grandfather used to grow it for the war effort. They're sick and tired of doing the same thing over and over. And so somebody's got 3,000, 4,000, 5,000 acres, and they've got a field that they say, hey, I need to put something that regenerates in there. And because they're going to plant corn next year. And I say, why not put some hemp in there?
Good rotational crop.
Absolutely. And I have it on my farm.
Right, absolutely. One of the things I want to note from there is, you notice he was talking in plants per acre instead of pounds per acre, which is what Gary was alluding to earlier. That should be a big takeaway for everybody to think in mindset, because you'll hear a lot, how many pounds per acre, so 50 pounds per acre or whatever it is. Go ahead, Gary.
And that seed per acre is based upon what it's being used for.
Right.
You may want that big stalk, you may have half the density of that.
So density is a factor when it comes to fiber hemp, because we want it to grow long and tall, so we get as much fiber as we possibly can. So Tom, I'd like to, if you want to talk anything about the growing aspect from your experience, key in on this conversation.
Yeah, this is, again, like I said, I farmed almonds, but I got over 10 acres that I had bought a number of years ago, and it was actually an old fellow that I bought it from. Raised horses, he wasn't a farmer, and so I ended up with a clean field, what I call a clean field, again 10 acres. And no farmable, there's probably 8 acres farmable there because it got a house on it. And anyway, Larry Sermon, Hemp Traders, contacted me back in November of, I think it's 2020, and asked me if I had any open land. We could do some hemp trials and determine the best farming practices for our area, again, which is Riverdale, or Central San Joaquin Valley, California. And I said, yeah, a lot of the experiences I've had with the farmers that were members of the co-op went out and like a lot of them, farmers across the U.S. grew hemp for CBD in 2019 and 20, and not one of them was successful. I had 6 farmers. We got about 50 to 60 members of our co-ops, and not one of them was successful with that. They're still hanging on to their flower, and so it's just a bad experience for those farmers to get your money up front as much as you could before you signed a contract with anybody. And so that's what I told Larry. I said, yeah. I said, I'll grow if you can come up with some funds up front, and which he did. I put together a budget. Budget would turn out to be about a third of what, but it's been fun. I'm going to continue because we're getting some good data off the farming side. And again, we planted 2 different trials, basically half acre, a little shy of half acre blocks in March 5th. That was our first planting. Larry provided the seed, a lot of the direction. We planted with the grain drill, and we harvested some of that crop just last 10 days ago, or 10, 12 days ago. Then we got our second planting that we planted April the 2nd, and still, that's still growing. We do the same thing, but the Larry one was different plant populations, which we planted by pounds per acre, but then Larry wanted to get the number of plants or sprouts per square meter. I said I deal in yards and I'll do it. Anyway, so we counted after Germany, we counted the sprouts per square yard. He's got all that data, and he wanted to double the rate on the second planting, which we did on April the 2nd, and it's all looking good right now.
Perfect. Yeah, and there's multiple different ways that people are actually planting the plants. We can go into that if anybody wants. But after the plants are grown, and I heard you say multiple plantings per year because in fiber hemp, we don't need the flower, right? We're trying to get it up there as tall as we can, harvest it down, and then there's a potential in some places to do 2 or maybe even 3 crops per year under that. But after we get it up to where it is, now we're going to get into harvesting. So I want to spend a little bit of time and talk about harvesting techniques and what you guys have seen as far as what's being done. Is it being field rented or baled straight up? Either one. You go ahead and start.
Step 1 is get a blowtorch. Anything that rotates that you try to harvest hemp with is going to get jammed up. And if you let it sit overnight, the only way you're getting it off is burning it. So if you are going to cut it down, a sickle bar is the only thing that we found to be able to cut it down. And those even get jammed up pretty easily. If you do set them at a bit of an angle backwards, you very often can get the plants to fall on top of each other. And then it actually goes in a windrow for you. You have to be pretty good at it, but there is something there to it where you can get it to windrow instead of having it just fall straight back on itself. For us, we use a little bit different process, and so when our stuff is getting cut down, it's not getting ready for as long. It's just getting field dried, just like you do with hay or straw. And so ours gets cut, and it rains so much where we are that we have to work around the weather more than anything else, because hemp does get moldy. And so we've found that if you get more than 2 rains while it's cut and laying down on the ground before being baled, then you'll end up getting mold in it. And then we found that if you get more than 2 rains on it while it's already baled, and we only have round bales where we are, just because there's so much rain that your square bales would go rotten. And so the magic number seems to be don't let it rain on it more than twice for us before it comes in. I think that our specifications are a lot broader than some of the other specifications for products. And that's because we're literally going to take it and break open the cell structure of that plant again. And then we're going to impregnate it with our adhesives. And then we're going to dry it out and compress it back together. So we're doing a lot of processing to it to get it into the formats that you see here in our lumber and our flooring. And I always bring these with me everywhere I go because people don't quite grab the concept of what we're actually making of it. If somebody sees it, touches it, feels it, very often smells it, then they'll realize and know what we're doing. But if you just say hemp, people say, huh, that makes sense. And then they don't quite grasp the concept of how dense it is, how hard it is. And the density makes it more fire resistant. The density gives it a hardness and a stability that's like a 200-year-old Brazilian checker.
So that is really awesome and amazing. What we have done is more focused on hemp or fiber when it's being used in textiles afterwards. On our small trials, we had to use broad forks, sickles, machetes, because the machinery we pulled out did not work. We had all sorts of things we tried. But when you're growing for fiber, it's very important that the harvest, it is redded. So we did different trials with different redding methods. And you can't do that in the field and get the quality product you want at the end. So in fiber, it is we found immediate harvest and then into water redding, which is about 10 days. And that helps break down the fiber so that they can separate easier from the stalk. It also gives you a lighter product so that it can be dyed. It's a lighter natural fiber. Harvesting, there is nothing more glorious for a farmer than to harvest, but that is where 60% of the people will end up losing their money is after that harvest, because they don't know what to do with the crop to preserve it. Once it's molded, it really ruins a lot in anything. Mold is your enemy when you're growing. So that's where we are with the fiber side of it.
I'll say one thing: when the going gets tough, call Franny, because I tell you, I've seen her work some miracles and things that I would have given up long before. But talking a little bit about the textile grade fiber, usually 90% of the time everybody wants it redded, and that is a very difficult process. It's not a science, and, I think it's more art than science, and that's going to be a real challenge for us for sure. We do have one company, Renaissance Fiber, here in North Carolina, that wants their fiber unredded, and I love that concept. So that takes a lot of responsibility off the farmer when we just dry it and bale it for sure.
Yeah, it's interesting because in North Carolina, you guys are dealing with different climatic conditions than we are out there in California for sure. As far as the redding goes, first, in fact, I did out crazy. I bought a swather, an old belt. I've been around forever. I grew up on a farm where I remember sickle bar cutting alfalfa hay and making hay for our dairy that way. Then graduated at the time I was in high school with a swather, and I had a belt drapers on, and I just stuck in my head, and I thought I can take this crop down with a swather like that. So I bought this thing at an auction, and we tried it early. When I say early, the crop was probably about 8 to 10 foot tall at that time, just to see if this would work, and it did, and Larry Sermon, again, his experience with redding in China, he told me about that, and I said, that just don't work out here in California. The labor, or anywhere in the U.S., really, the labor will kill you. But we did some redding, water redding, he called it. I had my idea, I got to figure out a better way, so I actually put some sprinkler pipe. Again, I'm irrigating all this crop with drip irrigation, but just put lay flat line to connect those drip lines to, and I had a way that I could hook a sprinkler, above ground sprinkler system. I thought I'm going to wet this with these sprinklers, which we did, and that may have helped. Now I'm thinking back about that process, because we processed some of that in the gin, and the turnout was a little different in the gin, what I call ginning process of the hemp fiber. So. One thing about the farming that I forgot to mention earlier was what I liked about it. I was really worried about the weed competition, and no herbicides on this crop, no pesticides, and again water. With the drip, we ended up with about 19 to 20 inches of water, which is fantastic for a crop that's 18 to 20 foot tall.
Kristen, one other piece of equipment we haven't mentioned yet. Kloss makes a machine that make a forage harvester, And there's a special head that a company makes in Europe that will cut that fiber in 2-foot lengths, and it will literally eat it. Any amount. What I've seen go through those machines is incredible. You can either cut it in 2-foot lengths with that special cutter head, or you can actually chop it up like the regular forage harvester and harvest it that way as well. But that's $500,000, $750,000 investment. So it'll be a little while before I get one of those.
And this is linking back to your overarching question about bottlenecks.
Absolutely it is.
And I'm curious, we have a lot of people in here. Is there anybody interested in the textile side of it? If we have people that are interested in that. There is that's really exciting. There's so much in the textiles that is happening in research, and we're in North Carolina, which this is the textile hub of the entire United States. It was at one point. And there's a lot of really interesting projects, research studies that are happening here about revitalizing textile mills and fiber. We're in a great industry. We've seen CBD hit kind of a peak. Fiber is the next wave. And in 2017, when I grew, I was one of the first people in the country to ever do a TED Talk called Hemp as a Crop. And I wanted to find textiles, a dress that was made out of hemp. And that's where it began, the passion, finding out, can I find anything in the US? And what the bottlenecks are, and we've got a long way to go, but we're all interested in it, and there's probably some other bottlenecks along the way, and it's in the supply.
Absolutely, yeah. And if you guys, we have Bish and Formation Ag downstairs. These guys have a lot of good information through trial and error on equipment, and they have equipment available. So again, that's Bish and Formation Ag. They're downstairs. And so now we've grown the crop, we've harvested. Now we're going to get into processing. Tom, let's start back down there with you. I know that's then we'll work our way back over. I know that's been a lot of your experience in the processing. So what are you seeing in the way of processing? And we can talk to it from different terms of textiles, all the way, and we'll end here with Greg and what he does here with the hemp.
Okay, again, part of the gym that we were no longer using, about 5,000 square feet, and all the old machinery. Most of the gyms in California had taken this machinery out of their gym, and I left it there. It wasn't in our way when we converted to the roller gym. I just left that line in place. It was out of the weather. The machinery wasn't really worth anything on the market. There was so much of it being taken to Mexico and all over that it costs more to take it down and sell it than just leave it in place. So now, luckily, we found a use for it. And again, we've modified that part, and that's what I call the ginning side, or where the actual saw ginning took place. And we've again modified that machinery, and I'm very happy with what we're turning out right now with that. Modifying the ginseng, the feeder that feeds the ginseng, modified the ginseng itself, and what we call the link homer in the back. That was a linking process. Made those changes, and it just trial and error. We kept trying things, and again, I've lived this gym for 40 years, so I've got a little bit of idea how the machinery operates. On the pre-cleaning side, which we just recently, within the last week, 10 days, we did changes earlier, but actually ran some baled hemp from the field, from our field trials, and put them in large square bales. I know we're talking about round bales, and you were talking earlier, but we don't really have access to those. And really what I've seen, that square barrier does a fantastic job of putting the hemp in condition that we're able to run in the gym. If you were there earlier, the Riverdale Hemp Factory, new formed company, not formally legally formed yet, but we've got a collaboration of a number of people there, and Larry Serban with Hemp Traders, Western Fiber. Mike McGuire has been around a long time. In fact, he's from Hanford, the same town I am, but he's been out in Oklahoma for many years and has a building background. And then Patrick Flaherty just recently came on board. He's very knowledgeable mechanical engineering side of things. So anyway, I talked to Patrick about what we were doing, and he's made some suggestions, and everything seems to be working pretty well with that. So we're able to turn out a product that fiber and herd, and what I call there's waste too that we're collecting that has value in the building area, building trades.
Yeah, Patrick's a brilliant man, I really applaud him.
This is one of my favorite subjects, Preston, to be able to take that to market. And so I'm working with 3 companies right now. We're commanding 15 cents a pound. That's quite a bit higher than most people have been anticipating, but they're happy to do that when they see that we've had so much to learn to get to where we are, and we've got to recuperate those costs. We've got to get farmers excited in this. Folks, if farmers do not grow this crop, we don't have an industry. It's over. So we've got to make it attractive to them. And my neighbor told me a week or so ago that, hey, a lot of my corn I'm picking, the combine showing me over 300 bushels an acre. On top of that, $6 plus a bushel, he's generating, $1,800 to maybe $2,000 an acre on really good land. So to be competitive with that, if I can get 10,000 pounds of hemp per acre at 15 cents a pound, that's only 1,500. He's grown corn all his life. He knows how to grow corn. He knows how to grow soybeans. He's got to learn how to grow hemp. And so the people are going to have to pay for farmers to learn to do this. We'll get the price down. That's coming, but just support us to get us to where, or we won't have an industry.
What's moisture content at about 15 cents a pound?
That has to be under 15%.
Under 15%.
Yeah.
And you for your wood?
Yep. So we purchase with standard grain contracts at 7.5 to 10 cents per pound, under 15% moisture content. We will buy between 1 and 3,000 tons per year. So solid market, give you a contract, purchase it when it shows up. We are more lenient with, in the wood industry, you have a 5% non-compliance rate in the wood industry, but we do a 10% with our hemp coming in, because there's a lot of learning curves. And I learned on my own farm this year that is the case.
And Gary, you said that Renaissance was buying it green from you at a higher moisture content?
Not green, no, it'll be dried and they'll take it.
Not ready.
Not red,
Correct.
what moisture content?
Less than 15%.
Oh,
Right on. And we'll jump into more questions. Thanks for the question. That was good. So processing is all over the board. It actually, again, reverse engineering it for what your final product is. But now let's get into talking about what some of these final products are. Greg, I think we'll start out with you because you have products right here. But as far as the product that you offer and when you're contracting, I would say, do you have specific varieties that you're using or specific harvesting technologies, or what is it? What do you require?
It is all over the place. So the stuff that we do ourselves, we have certain harvesting techniques. We have certain equipment that we use. First, we try whatever we already have, or whatever we can get our hands on easily, with the sickle bars and the tractors and the balers and things like that. Hence the round bales rather than the square bales. I can say that we have all different types of people that are growing 5, 20, 30 acres for us, and they have all different means of bringing it down. We do have Tommy Copeland, who's only 25 years old and has as much experience as anybody I know in the hemp industry, just because I grabbed him from the school farm where he was feeding the school pigs. He grew up as a row cropper and pig farmer. And so they were doing trials with feeding pigs hemp seed and then testing their meat to see what was coming out of it. And now he's actually my operations manager for the factory, has been with us for 4 years. And so to have 5 years experience in the hemp industry is pretty unique. I can say that it's a very young crowd. I can say that at the university, 80% of the incoming ag students express interest in hemp. So coming from a school that's got 2,000, 2,500 ag students at it, 80% of them say, hey, I want to figure this out. And we see that direct translation into our product. When we sell lumber, very often the lumber is getting sold to a grandfather and grandson that have a little workshop at their house, and they're going to make some sort of a shelf for his mom. Or somebody who has an interest in cannabis as, say, a 25-year-old flooring installer, and it just so happens his grandfather grew up for the war effort, or great-grandfather grew up for the war effort, and then they kind of talk about it. Because when I first set up Hempwood, one of the hardest things I had to do was tell my parents what I was doing. I was a bamboo guy, I was a flooring guy. And we inherited a piece of property, and when it sold, my parents said, hey, take their part of that and put it into my next project. And I filed patents on how to make hempwood. And at Christmas dinner, I came back from China and was talking to my parents, and I said, they asked me what we did, what I actually did with it, and I said, well, actually, I patented how to make something called hempwood. And he's like, hemp like they smoke, or hemp like the rope? And I said, like the rope. And he's like, oh, okay, that's fine, yeah, I get it. In Vietnam, there was rope made out of hemp. And so, to have that generational gap kind of filled by something that the younger guys are interested in, and the older guys understand that it does have its place in the agricultural and the building materials and the clothing, is a pretty neat thing.
Right on. Well, I am now looking at the clock and realize that we're kind of pushing our time. So when we're done here, guys, if you don't mind stepping off, and we'll take questions to the side so we can make room for everybody else that's got to come up. But Franny, in the way of final products, you were talking about fiber is what originally, or textiles is what originally got you into it. And I wanted to back up and saying some of the finest fibers that I've ever seen made come from warm water Reading, and I heard you say that earlier, just because of how those fibers fall off the stocking point. But anything related to fiber that you want to close us out with?
Sure. I've been in R&D this whole time, and as everybody has learned, there's a lot to learn. And there still is more, so it's now after over a year of R&D, looking at different blends, all these different people that are manufacturing textiles. NC State has a huge textile program. Looking at the blends, we had 8 blends we started, and now a year and a half later, we're down to 3 blends we like. And then finally, after R&D, in the beginning of next year, we hope to be launching those 3 blends in actual clothing line. So there will be more in textiles, and it's taken a long time and a long learning curve.
Yeah, and you guys have heard Tom mention Martin Servant several times. He's another one that's been kind of focused on that. So if you guys can find him around, he's here at Hemp Traders, Martin Servant. And yeah, doing mighty cool things. And also, if you get a chance, Barbara Filippone, who I know is in the house somewhere here, feel free to catch up with her. But let's go ahead and finish out. Gary and Tom, last words.
I was getting ready to get up and walk off the stage here. No, I'm just
You got
kidding.
1 minute, 39
I
seconds.
think the point that I'd like to make is that I'm excited about what's going on. I would have had to let go of about half of my permanent crew if it wasn't for what we're doing right now at the gym. I wouldn't have work for them. I kept them on another year of this PPP program where I was able to keep them last year, but that's not going to go on forever, and I don't want it to go on forever. I want to find work for them. I think this is a place.
Preston, one more thing. I'm really excited about an opportunity coming to North Carolina. It's a company called Planted. They make a medium density fiber board, something similar to OSB, and going to be a great alternative. They have a SpaceX engineer on staff there that they brought together some great brain power They've got a beautiful board. Well, yours, I believe, would be classified as a high-density fiber board. Is that correct, Greg?
It does have a higher density, but we do some panels like
medium
that too.
density as well. So we're real excited about that and what we think that can be. And their whole concept is around locally grown, and that board will not ever travel. That hemp fiber will never travel more than maybe a couple, 200 or 300 miles. So it's an interesting economy that I think we're going to have to gravitate to.
Absolutely. Well, guys, you can see that we're in the infancy of this, so we're depending on all of you guys to help move us forward, move this industry forward. So feel free to come up and ask these guys questions. Let's give them a round of applause. Guys, enjoy the rest of the show. My name is Preston Whitfield. I'll see you again a little bit later on, and have a great show.